In any communications process, there is the sender and a receiver. The sender is the person who sends the message, who conveys the message, and the receiver is the person who processes the message and gives feedback about the message. Now, a few things that we have to know here is that this loop takes place in any communicative process. Secondly, we need to know that the message is not always verbal. This message could be non-verbal, it could be in the form of written communication, it could be in the form of eye contact. So all communication is not verbal. In fact, it's estimated that only 20% of all communication is actually verbal. Much of the communication is in tone of voice. When my mother called me, she would say Derek. It was very different to Derek. Same word, very different meanings. So message is very often in non-verbal communication, such as writing, body language, etc., etc. The sender sends the message, the receiver receives the message, and the feedback will inform the sender whether this message was done as intended. Remember the golden rule of communication, that communication is never in the intent, it's always in the outcome. So it's not about what you intend to communicate, it's what the receiver processes and receives. So in other words, it's the outcome that counts. In the middle of this whole communication loop, there's a thing which we call noise. Now, this noise is not always physical. Of course, it could be physical. It could literally be a truck driving past, or somebody drilling somewhere, or some construction taking place in your office. Well, then that's physical noise. But there's also such a thing called psychological noise or cultural noise. Psychological noise could be where the receiver struggles to hear the message from the sender because the sender might be a male and the receiver might be a female, and this lady might have certain prejudices towards males of certain ages or genders or race groups, and this could affect how she hears the message. It could be cultural. It could be dialect, it could be many things. So noise is basically anything that makes it difficult for you to understand the message or to convey the message in the same way as you intended to be. Remember what I said earlier, communication is never about intent, it's always about results. So it's not about what you intend to say, it's what the receiver hears. If you don't believe me in this, well, if you're a male and you're married, go home tonight, and if your wife says something bad about her mother, I want you to agree with her. If she says my mother's such a bitch, I want you to say, oh, I'm glad you finally realized this, and see what she does. You see, your wife can say whatever she wants about her mother, but that does not mean that you can join in. What is there is psychological noise. There are certain things which certain people would hear in certain ways. Let's explore this concept of noise a bit further and look at the various barriers to communication. The first of 4 barriers that I would like to discuss here is language. This includes semantics, accent, jargon, etc. I travel quite a bit and I train in various countries, and I often find that I have to speak really slowly because people do not understand my accent. I'm from South Africa, and therefore I have a different accent to people in Australia or people in Europe or people in France or America. So accent is something you grow up with and you hear the people around you and you're used to it. Jargon is another thing. There's certain people who in areas who use specific jargon to fit into a genre group. If you're these young people who do a lot of rapping, you'll hear a lot of yo and yo man and things like that. Legal lawyers, people in the legal profession have their jargon. So language could be a barrier to communication if you do not belong to that specific group who use specific jargon, who has specific words and so forth. The second barrier are physical barriers. This could be physical in person, such as a hearing problem or a visibility problem, anything that could hamper the communicative process between two people and is on the body. It could also be external noise, such as construction work, dogs barking, children shouting, etc., etc. The third barrier is probably the one that the world struggles with mostly today, and especially because business has become such a global phenomena where you could have a factory in China, a call center in India, a head office in Germany, so there's so many different cultures, ethnicities, values, beliefs operating together, and this causes communicative problems. Certain words in certain cultures are okay, and in other cultures it's taboo. So one needs to be very careful how you speak to different people from different cultures, languages, ethnic groups. 99% of all conflict in the world are value-based. In other words, if you communicate with somebody who has different values to you, the chances of conflict is extremely